Okay, so tonight we're doing James 1, on our way to Revelation. Right, Robert?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm telling you, when Robert said you're doing Revelation, I was like, well, that's a good place to start. Pretty easy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I'm like, okay, ready
You
for
can't see it happening in front of you right now? Okay, I'll pray and then we'll get started. Lord, we thank you for this evening, and we thank you for everybody here, Lord. We just pray that I can get through all the notes I have, Lord, and that we have some good conversation. And this is a real heavy kind of a chapter, Lord, and I hope the guys feel like they want to talk about it. So with all that said, Lord, we just thank you, and we know that when we're here studying the Bible, you're here with us, Lord. And I thank you for that. And I also want to pray for Dallas and for Justin's family and all that they're going through right now, Lord. I know that that you're in their midst, Lord, because they are all suffering. Well, anyway, thank you, Lord, for tonight. Thank you for everybody that's here, and thank you for getting the Bible study back together. I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, let me shut this fan off before we
I
go
was just
further.
going to say, I should shut it off. I have to start with glasses pretty soon.
Before John,
Yeah, right after Hebrews,
Okay,
and then
so
right before
how many verses?
I forgot, Uncle Bob, how James 1. This is going to be awesome.
There's 20.
I sure hope so.
27 verses.
I hope you're ready. I got about 30 questions you all have to answer.
Sweet.
No, I don't. I wish I did. Okay, Anthony, you want to start and read, 5 verses or so?
I know.
Sure. All right, James 1. James, a servant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes scattered among the nations, greetings. Trials and temptations, consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. If any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to him.
But let him ask in faith without doubting. For the one who doubts is like the wave of the sea, driven and tossed by the wind. For that person must not suppose that they will receive anything from the Lord. He is double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. Let the lowly brother boast in his exaltation, and the rich in his humiliation. Because like the flower of the grass, he will pass away.
For the sun rises with scorching heat and withers the plant. It blossoms, fall, and its beauty is destroyed. In the same way, the rich will fade away, even while they go about their business.
Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial, because when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. When tempted, no one should say, God has tempted me, for God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each one is tempted when by his own evil desire he is dragged away and enticed. Then, after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death.
Don't be deceived, my dear brothers and sisters. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. He chose to give us birth through the word of truth, that we might be a kind of first fruits of all he created.
This you know, my beloved brethren, but everyone must be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. For that anger of man does not achieve the righteousness of God. Therefore, putting aside all filthiness and all that remains of wickedness, in humility, receive the word implanted, which is able to save your souls.
Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like a man who looks at his face in the mirror, and after looking at himself, goes away immediately, and immediately forgets what he looks like.
But the one who looks into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and perseveres, being no hearer who forgets, but a doer who acts, he will be blessed in his doing. If anyone thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his heart, this person's religion is worthless. Religion is pure and undefiled before God, the Father, is this. Let me do that again. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world.
Amen.
Okay, so does anybody have anything that they stuck out to them that you want to talk about, or?
Sure.
No, you can read next time.
Well, I didn't get to read, so I got to go first. You know what's wild as I began to read this, and I'm with Uncle Bob. I've had about 6 months to study because we haven't been together that long. I realized something. I'm actually like withering away, like a flower, like the grass of the field. But here's what's wild about it. It made me think of some things. Like, I'll literally wither back to the ground. I'll be buried in a box shortly. And so it made me think of those things that matter right now are eternal, which are what? My kids, my relationship to my wife, my companionship with brothers in the faith. These things are eternal. So my focus shifts from like temporary, withering things, which would be money and material stuff and all that kind of stuff. And it's so funny because we get so contaminated by the world. Of course, James points it out too. But it's like, I feel like I'm losing even that desire to chase anything of the world, I'm into things, but like I'm losing even being interested in things and focusing on being, discipling my kids more because they're eternal. Because I realize that like I'm literally fading away. Like Steve will die, and the only thing will be left when I'm gone is the memories with my kids and my wife and my brothers and my church and my the opportunities to be salt and light. And so it's kind of like this is amazing, and so it brings even more peace that the Lord has allowed me to see. I've never seen it so clear as to when I read it in James chapter 1 here and what he's saying. And we've all had that moment where we've chased money and things, right? I remember even the corporate ladder was like, I could go back and think, I'm going to just keep climbing it until I arrive. Once I get there, I got everything in order, and then I'm just going to live and I'm going to do these things. And then I realized, wait a minute, maybe it's not so much that, but just a little bit of that. I'll just chase just a little bit. I'm at the point now where it's like, I've lost any zeal for anything, like he's saying here, of the world that is withering, that is fading, that is ultimately burning and going back into the ground. And so I think that it really just blessed my soul to know that I need to focus not on this life, but the life to come.
Amen.
Good.
Something stood out just right while we were reading it, right when we got to the end of it. Even though I read it, it just didn't hit me. But if anyone thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his heart, this person's religion is worthless. And I thought, how many people, myself included, you know what I mean? Like, don't bridle their tongue, right? And we're dealing with God's word, and Jesus is the word of God. So how important are our words? I mean, you just never think about how important that is. And then you read it, it's like, wow. Just that little head, I just thought was
Yeah.
pretty much.
Okay. Well, I kind of went through and just found supportive verses that kind of support the different ideas that he talks about here. and a lot of the stuff he talks about here. So, just to start it off, we're going to start off with a question. And everybody gets a chance to answer. Okay, so what type of situation do you consider a trial? He talks about trials of many kinds. And I know when I started this thing, I had one idea what the trial was, and then the more I studied it, I realized, is he talking about being persecuted for Christ, or for your religion or your faith? But to be honest with you, I think those people that we were talking about, where Dallas is tonight, they're going through a trial. So I think it's both. It's all of the above. So I think everybody has their own idea what that means. So we'll start with Steve and go this way.
Yeah, it's amazing. The first thought I had was, see, when I think of your trial, I think, oh man, like, I could never imagine going through that. You know what I mean? Like, oh my gosh, like, how can... And yet, like, I went through something that you might say, oh my God, how did Steve do that? We went to a marriage thing in the woods, and our neighbors were invited. He was a fireman for CAL FIRE at the time. Super cool, and his wife had got married, and our little daughter was the ring bearer, or the flower girl in their wedding. And we went up there and we shared our story, and our neighbors were like, oh my gosh, we had no idea that you had faced this trial.
Yeah.
And Desiree, his wife, was like, I don't know if you guys are just really good at faking, or like you're really good at hiding, or what. No, I said, no, Des, you don't understand. I know what James was trying to tell me, that I can count it pure joy when I face various trials, for my faith is being tested. But I went through that. So there was ours, and it was a financial test. It was a financial trial. I had lost half of my business at the time, the revenue from my business, and so we went through a financial devastation. And it's funny because when I was in it, I didn't see it like that. I wasn't like, oh, I'm going through this trial, and it's like, but it pulling through it, I'm like, oh, I'm definitely now in the storm. I'm in the trial now, and I'm like, wow. But I didn't see it like then. But anyway, so I think that's what's so amazing about it. But yet, God knows what you will go through, and He will be sufficient for your trial. So just be encouraged by that. And of course, right. I encourage you to share your trials, but there was mine. And here's what I found wild, and I want to cut it short. How did green paper bother me and my family so much? How did I let green paper affect me so much? Well, it's because this is part of God's stewardship. It's part of life. It's part of how things work. And so, but God's going to do something miraculous and amazing through my hardship, my trial. And we'd seen stuff come. We had people come to the house. I was out having coffee with a buddy. God's provision for that season was just unbelievable. And it would take me all night to tell you the details of it, but I'll spare you those. But so that's my trial. I think that's what a trial was for me. And that's definitely a real life trial that we went through.
I didn't say it before, but verse 12, I mean, that's kind of what it hits on there. And I went through some stuff. Well, I've probably gone through a lot of stuff. But
yeah,
I memorized that verse years ago, and in just reading it again.
It's hand in hand with 2 and 4.
Oh, man. Because, and I would agree, I think trials are as simple as not wanting to go to work in the morning at times.
Yeah.
And getting your rear end and doing it and whatever else. And lately, the Lord's had a few that He's called me to do, and I'm just like, okay, when it starts, you know that He asks you to do something, and I can feel that, and I'm like, okay, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
So you do it. And then you get in, and your vision of what it is to be a servant is not what's going to happen.
Right.
So then when it starts getting rough, and it's the person you're working with is you're doing that, and you're going, but you're not, you're sitting, but and then suddenly I end up, and I just heard it this last weekend, don't grumble. I think it's in Philippians 2:14. Don't grumble, but in everything give praise. And well, it's the same kind of a thing. So, and then I have to check myself and go, oh Lord, what in the world? I'm that's me.
Yeah.
I'm the guy that's grumbling. I'm the guy that's, and you come back to that verse, and And it says, you know, and it's just kind of where I'm at right now, probably with the Lord and everything else. But it says we're going to receive that crown of life,
Right.
and that might. And I think the Lord says to me, "Is that enough?" And I kind of go, "Yeah, but what about? I'm supposed to be blessed. I'm the head, not the tail. I'm the right, and all this stuff, which I don't. I believe a lot of that was for Israel and for, but he says, "Is that enough?" And I have to kind of say, "Yeah." I mean, because when I'm there, we're done. All this stuff is. So it's just that process, I think, of enduring the trial, and sometimes it is just enduring,
Right.
just plain white knuckle.
But also they're talking about finding joy.
Yes, that's the
knowing
hard thing
that,
for me.
That you're worthy enough to be tested.
Yes, and what a different way in my life and in American society to look at trials, because when I think, okay, Lord, is there sin in my life, and what sin actually not is there? Which one?
Yeah.
Which one am I supposed to get rid of? Which one is, you know? And I start looking at this stuff. Whereas if we are truly rejoicing in that, it's a whole different mindset, you know.
Yeah.
And sometimes for me, it's just getting a hold of myself and changing the way that I view it.
Right.
Instead of being, wow, this is being put on me and this situation and I'm the victim here, kind of the right. I'm the one that's, and he says, no, change your thinking, because if it's a trial, and with what's coming,
So as we go through this chapter, try to see if you can find a thread that works through all the verses. Something that ties them all together as we're going through it. Because we're going to ask that one later. Neil, you ready?
Well, yeah, I mean, these guys are saying it right on the money. It's one thing it's saying here to me is, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. So these trials are testing our faith. I mean, this is what James is kind of saying right here anyway. And so the faith thing is, you know, I mean, all these trials, we have to have faith. I mean, we have to depend on God. You know what I mean? And so through these little trials, it's building our relationship with God all the time. Even though we think it's trials or hardships or whatever, really God is drawing us closer to himself, you know what I mean, with each and every one, testing our faith. And what's faith? You know, being absolutely sure of what we believe. So absolutely sure of what we don't see. And so we, you know, so we're trusting this God through all these trials. And so, I mean, I don't know, that's my take on this passage. And trials are good. I'll just give you a quick example. We're praying for a guy at my church. His name's Buck. And everybody's tried to help him. He's been going to the church for about, 6 or 8 years. He got married. Him and his wife started coming. Now they've got 4 kids. And this guy's just a mess. He's always been a mess. You know, the church people have all got together and helped him get food, helped him get a house, helped him get cars, helped him, you know what I mean? And this guy's a real piece of crap, man. And I don't like him. I've never really liked him. I just don't hang with people like that. So I don't look at the lunch after church.
I love it.
And stuff, you know, I don't want to hang around with my wife or my family. You know,
Because
I
I've
mean, this guy's,
experienced it, right?
you know, yeah. And he, you know, he starts having all these kids, and you know, he wears a cowboy hat. He thinks he's all, you know. And he pulls up in the church parking lot with his pickup, and parks in the front row where the handicapped, you know, people should park, or the old folks. And his tailgate is facing right there at the big, where everybody gathers there in the front of the church, right? And it's got all this filthy bumper stickers and stuff on, you know what I mean? I mean filthy, like, my grandkids are looking at that, you know what I mean? It just, the guy ticks me off.
Yeah.
And,
Righteous anger, right?
I'm telling you, man.
Well, that's the only kind we can
So
actually
anyway,
have.
so now they're having problems, and they lost their house, and so now he wants everybody to come and help him move again. Yeah. Anyway, these guys put me on this group text. You know, and I'm like, I'm not going. I mean, the guy, you know, I'm not his daddy. And you know, these guys all, you know, and here's the thing: this guy is taking advantage of the church people.
Yeah.
So he's taking advantage of all these good men, and they go and they help, and they buy them lunch, they get them a car, and they, you know what I mean, and all this stuff. And, you know, when you're dealing like with drug addicts, you know what I mean, if you just keep giving them drugs, you're just enabling them. You're not helping them.
Right.
Give them some clean needles and this and that. You're just enabling them to stay right where they're at. There's no growth, no nothing. People are just giving them money out the window. Here's $5. You know what I mean? As they're standing there holding their little sign, they go run down there and get them another shot. And you're not helping them. You're just giving your money away. You know what I mean? You're not really helping them, and that's where this guy's at, man. And it's like, so then he starts texting on this group text, which I don't know how I got on this thing, but he's, well, now I'm homeless because they got evicted. You know, I mean, the landlord had to go with the sheriff and the whole deal to get him out of this house. And then he wants church people all come help him move. And these guys all went for it again. You know, all my church brothers, stinking good guys, you know. And anyway, I'm like, you know what? And so anyways, I go to a prayer thing on Sunday nights. And so a bunch of ladies and people are there. And they're all talking about Buck and Sarah, you know what I mean? And yeah, I told him, I says, you know, so he's homeless. You know what? Maybe he's gonna have to just hit rock bottom because he won't come to Christ. You know what I mean? He's taking advantage of the church. He's been there for 8 years. Comes when he wants. Got all these filthy things on the back of his old beat up pickup. You know what I mean? The guy he's a welfare case. I mean, I don't have a good thing to say. But I found myself Sunday night repenting. I repented, you know what I mean? I've been angry, man. I just don't think it's right, you know what I mean? The guy needs to come to Christ. I can't fix him. God can fix him. We've all shared the gospel with him. These people have shared their love, their time, you know what I mean? And this guy's, you know, he's on the text back. God never done nothing for me, man. Everything is, you know what I mean? And you know, all these guys are trying to share on this group text, you know what I mean? So this is like went on for a week. He's preparing everybody to come up and help him move on Saturday, you know? Anyways, I don't know how I got into that story. What was my point on that?
Trial.
It's a trial, no. Trial.
It's a trial.
You're still in the middle of it.
Yes.
You're in the middle of this trial.
Anyways, so I think trials, this guy needs to be homeless. You know what I mean? He needs that trial because something's got to get him close to God. So far in 8 years, nothing's worked. He comes when he wants. He eats the donuts in the morning. You know, he gets the church donuts and the church coffee, and he comes on in there and parks in the front row.
So I got a question. I was trying to save something like this for later, but I got a question because we're on that. Would being homeless be a trial for him, or would that be something good? I think a lot of times we always assume something good equates to a blessing that we want, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the Bible says that children are a gift from God. I've never worked so hard, stayed up so late, stressed more in my life. That's a gift. But guess what? I'm more responsible. I'm on my knees. I'm closer to the Lord. And God's view of our life is not like, obviously He wants to bless us with all kinds of blessings, but the ultimate blessing is, I'm preparing you to Him who is able to prepare me to stand before God, which is Jesus, and He's looking and saying, I got to prepare you for that. And that's the good thing, like you're talking about. That's the good thing. And so God might be looking at a trial that you think is a trial, and He might be saying, actually, this is a blessing that I'm giving you this thing because you need it to be on your knees, because otherwise you would not be. So is that really a trial for that guy to be homeless, or would it be a good thing? I mean, only God knows, but.
Well, and that's what He wants us to do is to, you know, we got to persevere. And let's see. The testing of your faith develops perseverance, and perseverance must finish its work, so that you may be mature, so we can be mature and complete. Anyways, that's my deal. there's a trial that guy needs to go through. And he's almost right now.
No, this is not your trial, not
Yeah,
someone
I'm
else's.
thinking that.
Oh, I don't have any trial.
Even better.
I consider it all joy.
He needs to be going through trials.
This guy.
Bravo, bravo.
My goodness.
You know what my trial is those cookies.
It's
It's not trial, it's try all. I need to try all the cookies. Right?
I'm sorry I took so long on that.
No.
No, that's what it's about.
This really is probably one of the best verses in this whole chapter. But there are a lot of great verses in this chapter, and this one will definitely have the most conversation. So it's good to see how everybody feels about it, you know. And I've got a bunch of verses we'll go through once we get done with this, and they kind of lay it out a little further as far as the good it does. Go ahead.
So shoot me the question again. Neil got me. I'm still thinking this guy in the parking lot.
Yeah, I've already pictured that he's got a balls hanging from
Who
the
annoys you the most?
Right?
Who annoys you the most at church?
Who knows you most like church?
What type of situation do you consider
Okay.
a trial?
Okay. I think, kind of along what Neil was saying a little bit, anything that rattles anything has to do with tearing your, with your faith. So a trial is something that's going to, I think everyone that goes through a trial, and a trial's different with every single person that goes through it. It's going to look different. But I think we have in our power, we have the choice to be bitter or better when we go through a trial. And so I think that's what it's talking about. If we persevere, we're going to be better. We're going to look at a trial as a blessing when we get through it. There's people that have gotten cancer and they're saying, that's the best thing that's happened to me. And I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, I thought I was right with the Lord, but until I really evaluated my life, I had a year to dig into the Bible front to back. I realized how far off I was. I could have been lost for eternity. That changed my life. So just, and I know another guy who years ago was a neighbor at a ranch in Turlock where the fruit stand is. He was a neighbor there, and he came down to tell us when we first opened that there's people turning around in his driveway. He was a real grouchy bachelor kind of a guy, about 70, and he said, and he was mad, and he stepped back. So me and my mom were there. We remember it. He stepped back off the porch so he could see heaven, and he said something to the effect, "It's him that gave me this cancer," and I'm thinking like he was bitter. You know what I mean? He went the opposite direction, and so, I think how we persevere through a trial, how it affects our faith. If it strengthens our faith, then it was what this is talking about, what James is talking about. Count it all joy, and I think a trial too could be like, someone that wins the lottery. Like, what do they do with $100 million? All of a sudden they find themselves, they were, at church, they were doing this, but now they're in Ferraris and at strip clubs, and they failed that trial. They're going the opposite direction. They're spending it this way. They're concentrating on other things, and that trial, it could be a trial. That could be, it's a double-edged sword, like Steve was saying with money, where it takes you. And so, I think Paul's life was one big trial. When you look at his life, and he counted it joy. He counted it, what does he say? To die is Christ, or to live is Christ and to die is gain. And he had the right attitude when it came to trials. So,
Amen, Sebastian.
Whatever happened to that old guy?
What guy?
The guy that was blaming
He died of that cancer.
What was his name?
And that was Gil. Remember that guy? 2 doors down. His daughter lived there, Stephanie Gill, who we went to school with, and she ended up, he had no kids, he left it to his, not his daughter, but his niece. He left it to his niece, and she had it, it's sold. This was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But it really kind of shocked us that he couldn't just say that. He had to step back away from the eve of the house and point towards heaven and say, he did this to me, or else I would be strong enough to tell these people to leave my driveway. But they were upsetting him. We're just like, we're sorry that's happening. we're not telling anyone to turn around there.
He
You know what I
wanted to
mean?
cuss the people out on his driveway, and he couldn't even yell at
He
them.
didn't have the strength to yell at him.
Oh.
So he was mad. He was mad about that. He'd take care of it, but I'm in this frail position. And he looked up toward heaven. And I was like,
Well, and that he wouldn't acknowledge that means that he believes some.
so we just, you know, we're trying to give him some answers. We're like, well, maybe some telephone poles out front. We're just trying to be out of line.
Yeah.
You know, maybe my mom, we're just like,
Machine-gun-ness.
we're trying to see the bright side of it, but yeah, but crazy.
So let's see, what kind of trials? I think it's, I sort of use it, whether right or wrong, I like to learn and be right. I think it's pretty broad, whether it be spiritual trials or physical trials. And in my life, praise the Lord, I haven't suffered much persecution, but we still go through, there's spiritual trials and physical trials, whether it be money or whatnot. And I was even talking to Robert about this the other day, like, you know, I made a decision, it's probably not the best decision, and I really regretted it at first, but you know what? I had to pray to God so hard to get me through this decision that I'm really glad I made the decision now. So, and what really comes to mind is who's the young kid that just passed away? Is it Jeremy?
Justin.
Justin Rumble. His dad posted, "My son passed away. May the Lord somehow be glorified." Like, that's a perspective I don't really have whenever I face trials of that magnitude.
This guy is, his dad's a carpenter, and today supposedly he was making his son a casket
Well,
at a shop in Oakdale. So, and John Serta was going to bring some food out there. So, luckily, he didn't need me to help him, or you guys would have got pizza tonight. Just, yeah, John offered him a bunch of food, and he said the dad called him like 9 times in a row, and you could tell he's in that fog.
yeah, sure.
That you get in, and he will be till after the funeral on Saturday at the very least. Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought that was just an amazing comment that he had, because usually it takes me a really long time to finally get that perspective, and but regardless whether it be marriage or whatnot, I think it's all to sharpen us and strengthen us and change us. I couldn't just give you one. I don't know which one's the worst. I think there's a few different ones, but yeah, I hope that's a significant explanation.
For me, trials, kind of like Mike was saying, that, you know, there's the things that are physical, the kinds of things that you hear other people, persecutions, illness, relationship issues, death, disease, whatever, those kinds of trials. I you know, experienced some, but not a great deal. I don't consider that I've endured much compared to what a lot of people have been through, you know. But for me, kind of like Seb was saying, it's anything that kind of gets in the way of your relationship with the Lord. And so for me, trials are more internal than they are external, I would say. In fact, sometimes I find that external ones easier to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when things do happen, health issues and things like that within the family, whatever, I'm not one that asks why, you know, why me or why us or anything. To me, it's like, why not us? It happens to, you know, there's sin abounds in this world, and disease is one of the results. So I don't really question like that, but the things I struggle with more are in my own mind, you know, and the things of this world that draw me away from the Lord. Those are the trials that to me are more of a test of faith. So yeah, circumstance for me, it's sort of hard to see from the outside. It would be more internal, I think, for me.
That's interesting, Tom. It says that the in my Bible anyway, like the subtitle of this thing is trials and temptation.
Mhm.
So internally, you know what I mean, temptations, that things we struggle with and stuff. So I just noticed that when you were saying that.
Is that it? Okay. I don't know, I just, the same thing what these guys kind of said, you know, I mean, it's hard to go after everybody else, you know, especially.
I know. Tom needs to be
It's
the last
your,
one.
I think it's your faith, like, you're gonna go through this trial, and I think at the end of the day, like, it's gonna strengthen your faith, it's gonna strengthen your relationship. I mean, for me, that's just my, like, I guess, personal experience. But going through a trial, you're just gonna pray more. There's no doubt about it. You know what I mean? You're gonna pray more, and you're gonna be closer to Christ than you would be as not going through a trial. So I just think, like, you're gonna grow a stronger and better relationship with Christ going through it. Then you're supposed to have joy going through it. You know, I remember when Steve was telling his stories about the bread man. He was like, I gotta find some joy in this. Oh my
That
gosh,
was a
this
trial.
is-
Remember that? Oh yeah.
This is unbelievable. You know what I mean? But then you look on it on the other side. I mean, you know, he's got the coffee route now, and it's all a blessing. You know, to look back on it. But yeah, trials are just. I mean, they're tough, but I think that's the whole point. It's going to grow your faith, and you're going to come out better on the other side. And even when you're in it, you just ask yourself, like, somehow I got to find joy in this. I mean, there's just some possible way. And just, sometimes you can find a way, and sometimes you can't. You know, but I've asked myself a couple times, you know, that question, and I was like, well, it's going to be a good day. I'm going to find something good about something. You know what I mean? So, anyways, that's my little spiel.
I looked this up. I figured this would be one of the words you went for, Dad. The word trial in Greek,
Oh, good.
Blue Letter Bible did. Parasimus. It means an experiment, attempt, trial, or proving. First definition would be trial, proving, trial made by you or by bodily conditions, since the conditions served as a test. It's basically like a test, a trial of a man's fidelity. So that would be like temptation. Temptation is another one, just temptation. And that's pretty much it. Just either like a physical trial against, you know what I mean, your body, or a temptation. And as I got a chance to look through all this stuff, to me it really hit me. A trial is there's two things going on in a trial, right? You've got what it says, the testing of your faith, right? But then you have, like Angelo said, you come out stronger, right, from this trial. Like it says, testing your faith produces steadfastness, and the steadfastness helps you be more complete, right? And as I was thinking about it, it hit me, okay, if we're the body of Christ, right? Let's say you were a muscle in the body of Christ, and you wanted, and Jesus wanted to build some muscle. What's he going to do? He's going to grab some weight, and he's going to lift that weight, and he's going to keep lifting it until it does what to the muscle? Is he going to stop when the muscle says, I'm kind of tired now? No, you keep going. You push it. How many reps can I get out of this muscle? Boom, 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 until you tear that muscle. And then that muscle rebuilds, and then the next time you grab that weight, you can actually grab more weight than you grabbed before. And it's not a coincidence. I don't think that God made our bodies like that, because that's like a trial. Your body's going underneath the trial, and what you get is you see how much faith you got, and when you get done, you get more faith afterward, and you keep growing through these trials. And that's, to me, that's like what a trial is. And I didn't know you were going to ask this, but this is the trial I think of most often. It was one of my bosses that I had that was just in my line of work, to get like fired. You know what I mean? Like as a manager, you have to really be super incompetent, because usually these guys are really on top of it. And he did, but he was really incredibly abrasive. He was so abrasive that there were moments that I was right, and like people were like, you should just go to HR, right? And I could have gone to HR. And it was an incredible trial, and it hit me halfway through working for him. And I didn't know it was halfway at the time, but that I need to learn how to forgive this guy. This is what this is about. I'm here because I don't want to forgive this guy. And I was right. I was right. I could go to HR and they would be like, thank you for coming and pointing this out because you're right. And I realized it's really hard to forgive somebody when you're right and you deserve to get what's right. And so that was a trial. And when I got out of it, even more forgiveness. And when I was leaving the company, one of my old counterparts was saying bye, and they were getting choked up, and they said, you know what? And I never knew this. I never said anything to this person. I was never like, you know what I mean? But they were like, you know, you really taught me how to forgive people, and I started forgiving people in my life more. And I was just like blown away from that trial. So yeah, that's a trial to me.
So I'm gonna be a little bit all over the place because this topic is like, I'm thinking of so many different things to say. But a trial that I'm currently going through right now is I work with a pretty wide, diverse group of personalities. I work for Cal Fire. I'm on a hand crew of about 35 different guys, come from all different walks of the earth, all over California. And my trial is I get to know these guys, and you know, some of them are pretty hardcore Christians. A good chunk of them, like 6 of them, 7 of them, but leaves a good 32. Others are kind of in the middle. Some look far out. Some like completely. They just don't even buy into the idea of Christ. And so my trial is, you know, you can't really bring that up in the workplace. You can, but you gotta see him quite a bit. And so you don't want any hard feelings. And I talked to a few of them, and I say, hey, no hard feelings, but this is what I think is maybe we'll just try to exchange ideas. You know, and is this a trial of Christ trying to trial me to preach his word into them? Or is it him trying to say, hey, step back and let me show you what I can do? You lit the fuse, now let me light the bomb. You know, and it's just like another trial is judgment. Like how do I judge them if I don't know their whole backgrounds of what their families have brought them to be? You know, some of the ones that are more atheist, or some of the ones that are more on edge about the idea of buying into the idea of Christ. So it just, and I love all these guys, and they've never done me wrong. All good guys. I'm super close to them, no matter what they believe in. It's like, yeah, the trial of how much do I give them? How much of the word do I give them before I just have to give up? Do I give up, or do I keep on trying and potentially cause an HR problem where like, hey, this crazy Christian guy is just trying to brainwash these dudes, and they're like, he's going off, and I get it, you know, Christ is great, but this is work. You know, it's like my boss, our head boss, is pretty hardcore liberal and far left, and crazy enough, his parents are diehard Christians, but he's just like the rebellious. I think he's like a branch of Satan. He's totally don't like him at all, but we butt heads a lot. But I mean, so it's a lot. I can potentially get in a lot of trouble. So it's just crazy of the trial of how far do I go before I give up, or do I just sit back and watch God do his work with these group of guys? And me and the 6 guys that are Christian, kind of the same boat. We even have sometimes we're on for 20-something days at a time, and we have our own little Bible studies, and or even our mix of opinions, and we kind of all came to the same conclusion where we're like, okay, well, yeah, we can't drive us into them. It has to be on their own. But if we just light the fuse, maybe they won't put it out. Maybe they'll just let it blow on themselves and see it for how it is. But that's a huge trial of judgment, judging them for what they are, but we don't know. I don't know what they have the potential to be, what Christ can bring them to be. And it's overall, I would say it's overall kind of this my generation. I'm 24, and a lot of kids my age and younger, especially younger, the general population, I'd say, of this area, throughout California, it's like a lot of kids are just, their parents are fading away from Christ and the Word, and it's just going to progress into these people that are probably going to be atheists, and that's like another trial for me. Is just like, okay, what's this world going to be long term? I mean, I could say, it's fine, I believe in Christ, I know I'm going to go when it's my time, but what about the rest of my life where I'd experience, like right now what we're going through is just so much chaos. It's just like all these diverse personalities that just are always button heads, and it's just like, when I was in high school, it was actually pretty decently peaceful, you know, everyone was just kind of doing their own thing, and, you know, both sides had their views, but everyone got along for the most part, sort of. But now it's just like, it's
Take it serious now.
it's super serious. So it's a huge trial. Like, how many people do you worry about?
Yeah.
How many people can you change or try to change, and how much do you worry about what this is going to lead into? I mean,
Anthony,
I'm
you
checking
got me
out.
so pumped. I love that trial that you're going through. That's so cool. And thinking of the story of the sower and the seeds, I remember having feelings like that, you know, wanting to share this with your friends, and you sort of grew up like that in high school where you can have these conversations, and now you're realizing as you're getting older, people are hanging on to their ideas stronger, and they're more fierce whenever you bring them up, and you're like, it wasn't this way a few years ago when we were like just in high school, we could talk about these things. Now you can't. And that's because they don't belong to Jesus. They belong to the world, and it's just the way it is. But the story of the sower and the seeds, the good news is that whether you're harvesting or planting seeds, you know, you're still doing the Lord's will, and it's up to the Holy Spirit to really draw them in. But the good news is it's not just Anthony's responsibility for their soul. You are responsible to talk, and there's been different prophets throughout history where God's like, hey, look, you got to go tell them to repent. And if you don't tell them, you're going to be responsible for their sin. But if you tell them, then they're going to be responsible for their sin. And I think that's sort of where we're at right now. I think that might be why God put that on your heart. But it's not your burden. I just want to call this out just because I've struggled with the same thoughts and, you know, wondering. And you grew up with these people, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, we're close, but we're not as close, and it's more fierce. That is, you read the story of the sower and the seeds, and it's the Holy Spirit. You know, don't feel bad if they don't come around it, and you'll probably be shocked down the road, like this story that Robert heard. There's going to be people watching you who are going to be like, well, you know, you were talking to this guy, and I was just sitting on a 5-gallon bucket on the side listening to you guys, and I became a Christian. You're going to hear stories like that, and I'm just super pumped about that.
yeah, thanks for the validation. I know, I mean, me and the dudes that we do believe, and even the people that outside of work that I've tried to talk to, you know, once we do, the guys on my side that we believe, and we're just trying to, like, you know, just throw out a couple of ideas, you know, just to someone that doesn't believe. You know, we know we're fine, but just selfish to say, we're good, we're just trying to help you out. But did we do what we could do to help them out? I don't know. I mean, when do we?
Another thing you could do, Anthony, is pray for him, you know?
Yeah.
We don't fight with the weapons of this world, right? We got a whole other little battle chest. And an old lady one time told me, and I've never forgot this, and I've practiced it in my life, that, you know, she goes, you know, maybe somebody prayed for you, Neil, and I'm in the church and this and that. I gave my life to Christ when I was young. But she goes, maybe nobody ever prayed for that person over there.
Yes.
You know, maybe you had an aunt or somebody, maybe somebody prayed for you, but maybe nobody had ever. I thought, wow, I mean, that was just profound to me. I never forgot it.
Yeah.
And God is the one that does the work. It's the Holy Spirit, you know what I mean? It's not your responsibility. God's will is that none would perish though, but everyone would come to repentance. You know, so that's another thing, besides living that Christian life. You know, the Bible tells us, how are they gonna know you're a Christian? How does the world know? It's by the way we love one another. That's, you know what I mean? And I was missing that point a little bit here last week with Buck, but
I've only known Bud for a half hour, and I don't like the guy.
That's an awesome perspective, though, Neil. Thank you for sharing that.
I would
Thank
get a
you for
spray can
sharing.
and paint those bumper stickers
Yeah.
when you're not looking.
Right?
Yes.
Anthony,
I
I would
would
just-
and then I do some graffiti mark like on a train or something.
What's that?
We're in such a dark world. You guys are talking about how it used to be, and it was, the time when we could share things and disagree, and I've done it for years. But it seems like, to me, that there is such a darkness in the world right now with everything going on. If you live for Christ, brother, they can't help but see the light.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you do, when you serve, with the way you talk to people, the way, and you start interceding for your buddies because you have that connection, they're gonna start freaking out because they're gonna what's going on, because the Lord tells us that when we pray like that, He's gonna respond. So I think I mean, you can't help but be a witness. You
Yeah.
really can't. You can't. And especially since you desire the Lord.
Amen, man. And what he's saying is right here on the next thing down from where we're studying. If any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who
There you
gives
go.
generously.
Yeah.
Without
Ask
finding
God.
fault. So don't even feel convicted. Like he's not going to give
That's
you
right.
wisdom. Without finding fault, he'll give you wisdom. Even if you've screwed up as a Christian, he'll give you wisdom. Isn't that amazing?
And a lot of that we've already studied over the last couple of years in here in this Bible, we know there's a lot of times where he says, you have not because you ask not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so ask for those souls.
You
Listen,
betcha.
that's what we need to be asking God for.
Amen.
The souls of our family and the people around us and stuff, because he's not really interested in any of the rest of it, you know what I mean? It all belongs to him anyway. But I think that's what he's really interested in.
Sure.
Amen.
I know somebody who's going to know who said this, but I don't. It says, share Christ always, and when you have to, use words.
Right?
Yeah.
So share Christ with
You
just
betcha.
being yourself as a
Being
Christian.
a servant.
And when you need to, you should use words to plant those seeds. You don't have to use words. You just have to be a Christian.
Yep.
And 'cause there'll be things that happen, and you will set yourself apart just by your response to certain things.
Yeah. They're
that happen.
watching already.
Yeah, they're watching already.
You betcha they're watching you.
Okay, so we're gonna
Thanks,
bolster up this first couple verses, and I've got a bunch of verses we're gonna read. So Steve's gonna read Romans 5:1-5. Then we're gonna jump to Peter, and there's 3 verses in Peter. Anybody want to take them? 1 Peter 1:6-7, and maybe 8. 1 Peter 2:21. 1 Peter 4:12-14. Steve's going to start with Romans.
Romans 5, peace and joy. Therefore, since we have been justified through faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ, through whom we have gained access by faith into this gate in which we now stand. And we rejoice in the hope of the glory of God. Not only so, but we also rejoice in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope. And hope does not disappoint us, because God has poured out his love into our hearts by his Holy Spirit, whom he has given us. Amen.
So that's just kind of an extension on that first 2-4 in James.
Mm-hmm.
So who's got Peter 1:6-7?
I got 1, 6, and 7. In this you rejoice, though now for a little while, if necessary, you have been grieved by various trials, so that the tested genuineness of your faith, more precious than gold that perishes though it is tested by fire, may be found to result in praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ.
So it's like a big old pot of gold, and they're taking the dross off the top, pulling out all the impurities. Each one of these tests and trials gets you closer and closer to being righteous.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Amen.
Anybody got 2:21? Peter, 1 Peter 2:21?
I got that one too. If nobody, I mean, it's literally on the same page.
2:21.
For to this you have been called, because Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example so that you might follow in his steps.
And so by going through these sufferings, we're following Christ's example. And we need to see that as something we should be joyful about. And while we're here, we can still suffer knowing that it draws us closer to Christ and we're more like Christ. And we need to have joy in that. So 1 Peter 4, 4:12 through 14.
Dear friends, do not be surprised at the painful trial you are suffering, as though something strange were happening to you. But rejoice that you participate in the sufferings of Christ, so that you may be overjoyed when his glory is revealed. If you are insulted because of the name of Christ, you are blessed, for the Spirit of glory and of God rests on you.
Okay, when those guys start calling you bad names, buddy.
Glory and of God.
And the version I have actually says fiery Lord
Yeah, fiery.
as well.
Okay, then we can go to Hebrews 12:11. I'll read that one, and then we've got Acts 5:41 if anybody wants to go for that one.
Alright, sorry.
So, for the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. So it's that purifying you more and more every time you go through trials. Cutting one more facet in the diamond that is Neil, you know? Anybody got Acts?
I got it. 541
Yeah,
and 42 or just 41?
41.
Then they left the presence of the council, rejoicing that they were counted worthy to suffer the dishonor for the name. And every day in the temple and from the house to house, they did not cease teaching and preaching that Christ is Jesus. I had to go to 42.
Okay, yeah. I knew you were fishing. Okay, the next one is 2 Corinthians 12, 9 and 10.
Okay. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong.
Yeah,
Does it go on?
that's it.
9 and 10?
Yeah, 9 and 10. That was
Yeah,
perfect.
there's a list there. Hardships, persecutions,
Yeah.
insults.
Calamities.
I don't always do so well with insults.
That's a hard one.
When you're driving, the guy's like, what are you doing? Praise the Lord.
Sorry, Pastor Joe. I didn't know it was you driving.
Yeah, or I'm riding with him. Have a good day. Yeah.
Let me go back here. Okay, so I've got some other verses we can read on different items that this chapter talks about. Being double-minded, you know, making and that's about how you waver instead of having faith in what you ask God for, you waver, you know. And
So I got a question for double-minded.
yeah, go ahead.
It comes from Daniel 3:16 through 18. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If that is the case, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods, and nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up. Is that double-mindedness?
Saying, even if you
No.
don't.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, you have no. You want to see. You have a good message. I feel like.
No,
Well,
I don't. Go ahead.
I would say like, even if Nebuchadnezzar did burn him, eternally they wouldn't be serving their gods, because either way they'd be saved. Even if Jesus didn't save them from them being burned, after they had passed, they would be in the kingdom of heaven. So, yeah, it kind of is a double.
What do you say?
No, I was thinking, no, it's not. I mean, you're talking about Shadrach and the three, right?
Yeah.
They weren't double-minded. They were telling the king, we're not gonna serve your gods. And
No, but it says, let me read the passage again.
I'm
Wait,
sorry,
wait. Which
But
one?
to him let him ask in faith with no doubting. For if he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, tossed by the wind. But let not that man suppose that he will receive anything. So this is asking the Lord for something and then doubting whether he's going to do it.
Oh, yeah.
They told Nebuchadnezzar, we know our God can save us, but even if he doesn't.
Yeah. Even if it
So
doesn't.
were they double-minded,
Thinking he wouldn't save him, in other
thinking
words.
that he wouldn't save them? Saying that
I
he
don't
could
think
do
so.
it, but when you do it?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think they were more like God's will. Whatever he does, it's my God.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say it's double-minded.
And they had experienced him enough when they said it that they could care less. If he doesn't show up, it doesn't matter. We already know who he is, who he says he is.
Yeah.
So he can do it. He can not do it. We don't.
He can do whatever he wants. That's
Yeah.
right. And how are we to know? The mighty
We're
God?
already
We
settled.
can't.
So in one way, they knew he was God, but in the way of faith, it's
Yeah, I would agree with you. Their faith was rock solid. They knew and fully believed that God could do it,
yeah.
but they didn't know if it was
If he was,
if being a good thing for them. You know what I mean? If this was God's will for them to go through this, then they didn't want to presume. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
this was that.
Don't you love those guys though?
Yeah, I love those.
Oh,
I
man.
Even if he doesn't,
You know
I'm
what?
still gonna
and
serve
talking
him.
that way to the king,
Yeah.
right? The guy that's gonna.
I absolutely love for years. Ask Michael. I've loved Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego because they have this incredible faith, and you see what in Revelation it says. You know that the Antichrist is going to have power over the saints, and that is what the saints need to be saying. Hey, we know God can do this. I have faith that God can do this, but I just don't know what His game plan is.
Yeah.
And I'm going to stick with him no matter what, right? And it's really apropos that they're talking to the quote-unquote head of gold of the body of the Antichrist in division that Nebuchadnezzar had, right? He was the head of gold of that body that
Yeah.
made up all the beast empires. And they're talking to him, saying that. That's pretty, yeah.
And everyone in the entire country or world has kneeled down.
Everybody.
The only three who are
Right?
No.
And you got to think that maybe one of them was like, "Are you guys sure this is maybe?"
Maybe we should go back and
they
read about
were
this one more time.
And he's so mad that the guys that are lighting the fire are dying because he wants it that hot. Like he is like,
So with that in mind, how then do you interpret James? The doubting that James
Right.
is talking about.
so number one, what James is talking about asking for would be wisdom, right? He's saying asking for wisdom, which God gives to anybody who asks. And these guys were asking for like a miracle, which I would, you know what I mean? Like I would say, like going to the Lord and saying, Lord, give me faith, right? He might give you faith, but it might put you through a trial that you didn't ask for to get you that faith, right? Or he's going to give you wisdom or love, but these are all intangible things, right? And these things all deal with your spirit and your personal walk with the Lord. But they're talking about a situation that's happening, right? And I think you could take anybody. You could take the world's two biggest paradise, and on one paradise you have a physical situation, and on another paradise you have a trial. You roll those two dice. You're at the grocery store, there's a hot girl in front of you, you gotta take another look. You roll those two dice. You got in a car accident and the guy's cussing you out. You roll those two dice. You can just, your life is just made up of all these various location with a various situation. You know what I mean? And then how are you responding to those things? And they're saying, we know that God has control of these dice and he can change them however he wants. But they're not saying, I don't know if God's gonna give me more faith. I don't know if God's going to give me more wisdom. You know what I mean? Like this is something that he doesn't have to change. God doesn't have to change your physical situation to give you wisdom. He can give it to you just like he did with Solomon. So I think that is different in itself right there. But I think that wisdom itself is something even that comes up in this passage. Is really learning to have a better understanding of God himself, right? So when you're saying, Lord, give me wisdom, what you're really saying is, what's the beginning of wisdom? The fear of the Lord, right? And how do you get the fear of the Lord? By understanding more about who he is, holy, holy, holy. So basically he's saying, anybody that asks to know me, don't let them doubt for 1 second that I am not going to reveal myself to them to a greater degree, because that's what his heart is to do. You know what I mean? But they weren't asking, can I have a greater understanding of God? They were saying, is he going to change the situation? We know he can, but we don't know if that's his game plan. That's kind of how I see it. What do you think?
That's why I asked.
And I think, just to add to that, in James 1:6, that's where he says, "But let him ask in faith with no doubting, for the one who doubts is like a wave on the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind. For that person must not suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways." So I think that when these guys were saying before Nebuchadnezzar, they knew. There was no doubt that the Lord could do it, but they also knew that sometimes his providence doesn't act that way and in that way. So I think they were dead on with what they believe. But I think what James is saying is it's somebody who's like doesn't understand that God can do anything, that he is faithful and that he's just. I think they're asking kind of a way of maybe, I don't know if he's gonna, who is he? Kind of questioning his character. That's just my take on it.
Faith is a big deal with God, though. We all know that. It's huge. We're saved by faith. Faith is a big deal, man.
Yes.
It's a huge thing that we all need to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The more I learn about faith, at least recently, the more I see it as that, like an understanding, like you were saying, an understanding of God, like just like if Henry, your brother, if I was talking to Henry and he said, "I'll be, yeah, you have a Bible study. When's it? 6:30. I'll be there." I have faith that he's going to show up at 7:30 or 8. Like,
Yeah.
Right? That's Henry.
And it'll be here till midnight.
Yeah.
Save me a plate.
Right?
I'm on McHenry like Modesto or Escalon.
Yeah.
Save me a plate. That's what he always says.
That assurance of things not seen comes from my personal relationship with him,
Yeah.
and I know how he acts in those situations, right?
And he can do anything.
And as you get to know God more, then you get to see, like, I see how he's going to react. Now I have a little more faith because I get it a little more.
Well, while we're sort of talking about this, I don't think it's much of a change of subject. A lot of times people will bring up God was going to destroy the Israelites, and then he changed his mind. Moses went up, talked to him, said, no, you don't want to do this. Let's change your mind. Did God change his mind? He says he doesn't change. Did God change his mind? What do you guys think?
Maybe it was Moses' trial. And he was testing Moses.
But God said he was going to move forward. And I believe God when he says he's going to do something. He was going to move forward with this action. And then he didn't. Did he change his mind whenever he didn't?
I think he had his decision made the whole time.
Yeah.
Well, he made a covenant and then he divorced them. You know, Israelites. In Jeremiah it says this covenant between you and me is no longer good. I'm gonna write it on your hearts. That's when he decided that. Like, I don't think that's when he decided it, because I think he knew it when he created the earth, that he knew all this was going to lay out the way it did. So I don't know. Does think he changed his mind? I don't know.
Well,
And he started with the commandments, and now they're not valid.
I can't think of where exactly it's at, but I know you guys know the king that was going to die, and Elijah, one of them prayed for him, and he got like another 13 years, and you know, because Elijah asked God. So I mean, God's the one that decides the death date, right? I mean, He gives and takes life, and God even told him, "Okay, I'm gonna let him live, because you asked me." You know what I mean? So I mean, do we change God's mind? I mean, do our prayers work?
I think that's the point. So what was God? Was God, whenever God was going to just destroy them,
Yeah.
why was He going to destroy them? Because He's just. Was He unjust after He didn't? No. But God's also merciful. So what did Moses do? He appealed to His mercy, right?
Right.
And all Moses did was the same thing in that story. Is that king cried out to God, appealed to his mercy. It's the same God. He's still just, and He's still merciful. And I think we're going to get to a verse pretty soon that mercy triumphs over justice, right? And
Is that
it's-
chapter 2?
I think it is.
Yeah.
And it's the same God. But I just think all these things about how, you know, did we change, or are we without wavering? And the world tries to make things so muddy and confusing. I think it's important for us to know what is solid and unchanging, because it's like the world's going, no, he changed. He's wishy-washy. And it's like, no. God is always just. But lucky for you and me, He's also merciful. And we don't have to appeal to His mercy. We could just be like, judge me, God. And it's like, no, I don't want to, but if that's what you want to do. But we could appeal to his mercy. He's also loving. And anyways, I just, that made me think of that. And I think it's important to have an answer for that, especially in this stage of life. What do you think, Tom? Tom's sort of, I think.
That's way too deep for me.
No,
Okay.
I think you're right. I think it also speaks to the power that we have, that we don't even realize as a son, being grafted into what a sonship of Christ, or a sonship of God through Christ. That when the Lord determines to do something, or He says He's going to do something, we can appeal to that. As a kid, as a son that would go into the presence of his dad, who's the king, and say, man, is there any way you can not do this? Because I'm not a father, but if I can imagine a father going, no, this is, and you see you're like, okay, you know what, we'll do it. You know, I have this other thing planned, but, and I think it speaks to that as well, the power that we have.
I think, the perfect analogy, because there's been times with Nico, and who created the family? God. And He did it to talk to us and give us that message. There are times where Nico came to me, and he's only 3, and he's got a little sister, and he's pretty naughty. And he goes, no spanking, Dad. I go, no, you're getting a big spanking. And he's like,
No mercy here.
Dropping the hammer.
please no, Dad, please no. I'm like, no, you're getting a big spanking. Please, Dad, I'm sorry, Dad, I'm sorry. And I wasn't even thinking about it from a biblical perspective. And I'm like, I could tell that you're genuinely sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you go give your sister a kiss and you get no spanking. And I was going to follow through and give this little boy spanking.
Sure.
And he appealed to justice and mercy and love. And I think that's what we do with God. I think that's why God set up the family unit that way on purpose. It's not just coincidence evolved that way. It's on purpose.
Yeah.
Do you think those moments in the Bible where God changes His mind? I mean, obviously, a lot of those people wind up after they pass. You know what I mean? Are going to get whatever judgment they're going to get, anyways. It's not like they're getting a temporary reprieve, right? But when God changes His mind in the Bible, do you think everything we see, you know, the old festivals are like a picture of Christ, and you know what I mean? Everything's kind of like looking forward at like these things in the future. Is Him changing His mind like a view of us coming to Him, right? And Him going, you deserve death, but you know what? I love you, and I'm gonna change my mind on that. I'm gonna, you know what I mean? Show mercy.
I think it is, and I think we have to make a distinction that I don't think changing one's mind is the same thing as changing one's character. I don't think God's character ever changed from the Old Testament to the New Testament, but His
That's
mind
true.
changed. Like a recipe. If Chef John's making something and he's like, "Hey, get me the salt," and I'm like, "I'm gonna get the salt." Meanwhile, Anthony gets him the salt. And he's like, "Get me the pepper." It's like, "Oh, you changed your mind. You're so fickle." It's like, no, he's making the same recipe, and his character never changed. And I think that's an important distinction to make.
So one of the next verses I was going to read, I'm just going to read it.
Yeah.
So it's 1 John 5:14. And this is the confidence that we have toward Him, that if we ask anything according to His will, He hears us. And I've always felt like if I'm praying and things are happening and I see them happening in my life, it's not because I'm praying for things for me. I'm praying for things that God wants, you know, and that's when He'll move His hand, and that's if He wants to show mercy, then He will. Yeah, but when you're praying in sync with Him, and that is the goal, really, is to get to that point where your prayers are all about Him. And I know that like our prayers for Justin's family and those are things He wants to give those people. I'm sure of that.
Sure.
That's right.
So anyway, I didn't mean to butt in
No,
here.
that's
No, that was great,
Right
and I think
on.
that's super. I think that's right on with it.
Yes.
Praying in accordance to His will. I think I
Yes.
spent most of my Christian life praying in accordance to Michael's will, and I wondered why my prayers weren't answered. And there's a huge difference praying in accordance to God's will, and I'm still trying to learn how to pray in accordance to God's will. But I think I'm at a point in my Christian walk now where it's like, now at least I know I was not praying in accordance to God's will. I was like, hey, Lord, I really want this. Oh, it would be so comfortable if I had this. Lord, it's for the family. It's for the, and I could justify it. I'm justifying it with the Lord, you know. And like Robert said, and you guys all really said in the beginning with Uncle Bob's great question with the trials. It's like, well, you know what, Michael, I've got something really important for you. This trial you're going to go through, and so it's not going to be in accordance to your will. But then whenever we pray in accordance to God's will, and He hears our prayer, and we appeal to His mercy and His justice, mercy triumphs over justice. I mean, I pray in that for me. I know how bad of a person I am.
So are you doing the chapter next week? Because I'm anxious to hear you lay that out.
So, I don't even know if that was chapter 2 or 3. I just remember reading that.
I'm anxious to hear you lay that
That was
out.
pretty cool. Sorry.
And I think there's times that He gives us extraordinary faith too.
Yeah.
When people will claim, I mean, it's like the Lord has told me about you're getting healed, or whatever. There
Yeah.
are those times.
Yeah.
I haven't really experienced them too much myself, but
Well,
I
you
do
know, your dad is still here, and
Well,
that
that's
I
true.
think in itself is a miracle.
it's huge.
Yeah.
It's
It's
it
huge.
really is. Really is.
Okay, I'm just going to read a couple more of these verses that I have here, and I'm going to read one that Neil talked about earlier, which is Hebrews 11:1, which it will describe what faith is, and then the verse applies. Will tell you how you apply the faith. Now, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, and the conviction of things not seen. Okay, now and then you jump to 11:6. I mean, it says, "And without faith it is impossible to please Him, for whoever would draw near to God must believe that He exists, and that He rewards those who seek Him."
You gotta believe it, man.
You got to
or it
believe
doesn't work.
You have to have that faith. You have to have what it says right here.
You gotta believe it, man.
Yeah.
I think it's in this book right here, James 2, he talks about, then he talking about if anybody's sick or whatever, we get the elders of the church and everybody, and they'll lay hands on you, anoint you with oil, and do all this stuff, and the prayer offered up in faith will heal them.
Will heal him, yes.
That's what it says.
Yeah.
So where did our faith come from? Individually, I mean, where did your faith originate? Where did it come from?
Well, gosh, you know what? When I think I was about 14 or maybe a little bit younger, I asked Jesus Christ to come into my life, right?
By faith?
Well, I don't know what it was. I don't know what it was, Tom. But it changed my whole life, and I didn't even realize it at the time.
Right.
You know what I mean? I was like in a youth group, and everything it was cool, you know. But then as I grew up, and then I looked back on my life, God changed Neil Carnes that day. And even though, like, I went through high school and I partied and we did all this stuff and everything, but I had changed, man. I mean, like, these guys, I remember one time they wanted to go and they do some bad stuff, and I'm like, let me out. You know, we're all out drinking, Cruise McKinley, whatever. And they're gonna like go hurt someone, like, let me out. I mean, I just didn't have the stomach for it, you know, what's the matter with you, Carnes? Let me the hell out of the car. You know what I mean? I'm not doing that. And why? I mean, I look back, so then I'm a dad now, you know what I mean? I'm 25, where I'm looking back on my life going, why didn't I do that? Why didn't I just go with the, you know what I mean? God had changed my heart way back at 14. And so in some different circumstances in my life, coming up to high school or whatever, you know what I mean? I just couldn't take it, you know what I mean? I'm out. And why was I? Well, because God had changed my heart. I didn't seek evil any longer, but I seeked what was good. You know what I mean? And I guess that faith really, it just grew, Tom, you know what I mean? The more I was in a relationship with God, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The more I think is where it came from, just knowing God.
Where do you think it starts, Tom?
I can go back to my beginnings like Neil is recounting. I can't say that I had faith, but I prayed that prayer, when I asked God into my life, based on what I had been told, about who Jesus was and what he had done. I don't know if I was exercising faith at that point. Because it was kind of like, this is I'm at the end of my road, I have no other answers. And I'd always thought that it sounded real and true, but I've never been willing to, entrust myself to it. But I don't know that it was, I don't know, I just feel like it was a gift. The faith that came after that was a gift. And so that I struggle sometimes with you've got to have faith, like we're putting a load on ourselves, like there's something missing in us that we've got to manufacture, that there's something wrong with us if we don't have enough faith, and that we somehow have to go to the faith gym and build it up or something, you know what I mean? And because I know a guy, I have a friend, and we've had talks about the Lord, and he said, man, I just wish I could have your faith. And I'm like, that's tough when it gets that honest,
Yeah.
because it's almost like he sees what he's missing, but there's something that he doesn't feel that he has faith. And I honestly didn't know exactly how to answer him. I felt bad, but I didn't, because I'm going back to how did I begin, and I don't know, that night when I asked Christ in my life, I don't think I would have said I had faith. But maybe a few days later, I think I might have.
I think just the
So-
act of doing that, I think, is the beginning of faith.
Yeah,
Just an act of,
You had that faith to
it
say
was
that.
an act of faith, I guess.
and as a non-believer or young believer, you don't, like, I'm listening to your stories, and I think I didn't even, same thing, I didn't have faith, but according to the definition, like Uncle Bob just read, it's the hope, you
Yeah.
want to, you just, you know a believer, you want to stop doing what this isn't working. So I think that's just the seed of just the little beginning. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't even realize it,
Yeah.
but it's the beginning of
And
faith.
I knew I would never see Christ in person until I died or was gone. So I had to have faith in this being that I prayed to take away my sin.
It's just maybe it's just baby faith, just a
Yeah.
little, just an ounce, but it's where it starts.
It's a mustard
It's
seed.
gotta start somewhere.
I
Yeah,
think
it's gotta
because
start somewhere.
and
Carrot
scripture
seed.
always relates faith to action. So you, with that action,
It was a step of faith.
and I
It's
do
the
believe that the
beginning.
Lord gives us the capability to do that, in my own opinion, that He draws us.
Yes.
But I believe that that's faith. And it's massive because it took you from being dead to being alive. Right?
Right.
But I know I'm with you. There's times I'm like, man, I don't want faith. I'm not even.
At the time, I don't think the concept of faith was in me at
Yes.
all. I wasn't thinking about faith. I was just thinking about, who is this Jesus? Who's this God? What answers do I have for myself? None. And so, but when I'm confronted with this friend, who's bringing up faith, and he's just on the other side.
Yeah.
Well,
You know, it's like, that seems to be his stumbling block, is that he can't find faith inside himself.
I don't know.
Like he needs faith before he makes that decision.
Right.
You know,
You said something a long time ago that I think is really impactful. Something every now and then I'll remember and be like, oh my gosh, I gotta really do that. It was when we were talking about Enoch, right? And how he didn't have the Bible or nothing, and somehow he had this relationship, he walks with God, right? And you'd said, we each have as much of God as we want to have, right? And I think that sometimes when we go to God, it's like that rich young ruler where he's like, yeah, here's what it is. You want more? You can have it all. You just gotta change this or give up that or whatever the thing is, right? And the thing I think makes this Bible study so awesome, not that anybody here is perfect, but all the guys here are like, we want to do that. That's what we want to do, even if it's hard. Sometimes it might take us a little extra time to, you know what I mean? But that's our goal. That's where we're going. That's where we're headed. We want that relationship. And faith, I think, is the reward for that. When you come to the Lord and you're like, hey, I want to step out and get to know you, just like it says, you have to believe that he is, and he's a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. And when you're seeking him, that's the response. And the thing that gives you that faith is that Holy Spirit in you that brings that faith to bear and puts it on your heart. Because imagine trying to tell a dead person what it's like to look. So he's like dead, and then you're like, okay, you gotta, smell it. It's like that's what it's like trying to tell somebody about like what it's like to experience God. You're going, well, you can feel. I know he's real. I don't know how to tell you that he's. I mean, through the feeling, and you know what I mean. It's like you can't. I don't know how to articulate it, but it's true, and I know it, and it's real, and I believe it with all my heart. You know what I mean? And I think that comes from the Holy Spirit in you, and then also being willing to give it up to the Lord. Remember, we were talking to I don't want to say his name, but we went out to see that guy that was having trouble at one time, and he was like, I know that God's in control, but I'm just not going to give him control. How do you give him control? And you know, just like
get down on your
I don't
knees.
know how do you right now. You just give him control. Like, I don't know how that's even a question. Yeah. You know.
But Tom, I think, can I share something?
Mm-hmm.
I think Robert's right. Like,
Well, Tom's right because he's the one that said it originally. So.
yeah, I think you're right that Robert's right. But I think also a lot of these can be found in like the parables. Like we always talk about, like what's the oil with 10 virgins.
Mm-hmm.
I think the story of the talents. And maybe I'm not interpreting this right, but I want to get your thoughts on it. There's the 3 guys who get the talents. Where did they get their talents? They didn't have their own money to go invest it. It was given to them, and then they had that to go invest it. So when you made your decision to become a Christian, that was given to you, and now you're investing that. So maybe this would be a bold step, and maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But maybe we could tell them, hey, look, I think you do have what you need to make that step, and once you make it, you'll find out.
Yeah.
And maybe he's burying it.
Yeah. I think you're right. Because the faith is a fruit of the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
And so, someone who doesn't have Christ doesn't have the Spirit. So that he doesn't have that fruit. But he's seeing it, I guess, in others. He knows it's there in the world somewhere, and not in the world, but in people who love the Lord. But he's saying he thinks he needs to have it first in order to make the decision, I guess. I don't know, I'm really struggling with how to answer that,
Well, faith, it's a big thing. It's a big subject, Tom. It says if you just got the size of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. You know what I mean? And I mean, it's kind of a hard thing to understand, but we need to really, it's worth us, I think, talking about and studying because, like in the healing, okay, the prophet up in faith heals. Well, they didn't get healed, so they did not have enough faith. I mean, I got personally experienced this. A buddy of mine, 32 years old, so this is 30 years ago for me. And we're at like a men's church, men's advance. You guys, the boys know what it is. And he had cancer, you know what I mean? Colon cancer, and he let it go too long because, you know, he was like a manly man, you know what I mean? Didn't go to the doctor, nothing. Anyway, well, it ended up in his liver and everything. And so, you know, we prayed for him. He died. You know, he had cancer in the liver. Once it gets in your liver, you're done. And he was a good Christian guy. He was my prayer partner. Anthony Valone, this big old Mexican guy. You know, like about 6'6", great big dude. Yeah, man, we prayed, and all the men were praying. I mean, a bunch of godly men. The whole place, sanctuary was filled with them. You know what I mean? And but he died. Like, did we not have enough faith, God? Well, I've grown since then. I don't think that was it, but God chose to take him. But you know what I mean? I kind of felt bad for a while. I mean, I felt like
Right.
it was my fault. I didn't have enough faith,
Right.
maybe.
Right.
You know?
I think that's the kind of thing I worry about sometimes when we talk about faith, is that we get caught up in that and feel like somehow if our prayers aren't answered, there's something wrong with us, you know.
Yeah. Well, because I can find enough things wrong. for me.
Absolutely, yeah. We know there are things wrong with us.
Yeah, but it's,
So we are called.
it's actually all God's timing.
That's why I'm bald.
It's all God's timing when He answers your prayers. 'Cause I
Yeah.
prayed for decades for stuff
You know what? No is a
that I
valid
needed
answer.
answers to, and it took decades.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
You know, no isn't a valid answer too. I mean, God
Yes.
can say no. That doesn't mean He didn't answer your prayer.
Yeah.
You know, just like a good dad, you know.
Yeah.
has to
Just
say
didn't answer it the way I wanted.
Good.
One other thought with your friends, if someone gets to the point, and I'm not saying this is the right answer, I don't know, I'm just sharing thoughts. If someone said, man, you know what, I think you're onto something, I wish I had your faith, I think I might try it out. I'd probably say like, you think that's it? Well, God says, taste and see that I am good. Why don't you taste it?
Mhm.
And if it's yucky, spit it out. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, I
That's-
don't know if I'd
yeah,
word it
that's-
like that, but.
Or it's
It is the challenge God gives us, as it gives the non-believers, taste and see that I'm good.
it's like we've discussed tonight. Your faith started after you said the prayer.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to initiate faith, you have to pray the prayer,
Right.
and that will
Well-
start your faith journey.
Yeah.
And look at all the people that Jesus healed, right? Where he's like, get up. Like, he didn't heal them on the ground.
No.
Or like,
Yeah.
go back and go see, go talk to the priest, the lepers, or stretch out your arm. You know what I mean? And it's like, it was crippled until the guy
That's a really good point.
stepped out.
They had to act.
Because it's like Peter getting out of the boat,
Yeah.
you know.
He made the step of faith.
Yeah.
Because for him to even question, he's got enough faith right now to question it, whether it's real or not.
Yeah.
It's just that, because if you don't believe in God, you're
I
not
think
even
the
gonna-
question is less how do you have that kind of faith, and more how do you have that kind of courage, right? The courage to actually act out your faith, and go for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to go with Ephesians 2:8. It just for it is by what grace
Right.
through faith that ye are saved, not of yourselves.
That's right.
It is a gift of God that
There you
least
go.
any man should boast. And like so it's rocked my world. Like I can't. I'm just like, and so it's funny, Mike. Good point with the analogy, spot on, because with the
Talents.
yeah, talents, spot on. But here's what's wild too. Even the gym guy, and I said this to Nick Martino, which needs to come to our Bible study. We need to keep bugging Nick, but he was talking about the same scenario. The gym guy, man, I wish I got that faith. And I said, so my new evangelism approach is this. It's pretty good. You guys ready?
Okay.
So like the guy at the gym goes, man, Tom, I wish I can have your faith. And you look at him and you go, you can't. Well, what do you mean I can't? I see? And you say you can't. God has to gift you this faith. You cannot do this in yourself.
That's a really good point, and it's an honest one.
Right?
Yeah.
And Mike, I'll be honest, I want to take human autonomy. I want to be in control. I want to be the one that did this. But God's showing me that I can't. So I was the same way. I guess I said the sinner's prayer at 15 with my stepdad in the living room, and I can give my testimony. And that was the first step. of a transformation that was coming. But I see that clarity of truth now because God allowed for that as a gift to me.
Amen. Amen.
The least I could boast. Because the Christian wants to argue with me. Well, Steve, you had to choose because what kind of God would force you to love him? I get this from Christians all the time. What kind of God would force you to love him? And I'm like, so let me get this straight. You want to take credit for the sovereignty of God in your life? Well, I'm not saying that, but, well, what are we saying then? Read it again. Paul was clear. Which, who wrote the book of Romans, by the way? Anybody want to guess?
The Holy Spirit.
Boom! You say God too, right? God wrote Romans. I forget that, so I'm reminding myself. I give Paul too much credit.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But it was inspired by the beauty of God to write the words. He led Paul. He did everything through Paul. So when I can read those letters and those epistles and understanding what they mean, I can take heart in them. So, yeah, it's been really cool for me because it's kind of changing the whole, because see, even when you look at the great Protestant Reformation and what took place there, and Martin Luther would beat himself because he was so sinful, but he wanted to become a monk to be holy, but he goes, I'm just pulling his hair and he's wretched and he's beating himself and he would go out in the cold and he would shiver and he would spend hours out there until his bones hurt, trying to get God, until he read Romans and said, you've been justified through faith. And the light bulb went off. And he went,
I can do nothing.
I can do nothing. It's by faith. And he got this epiphany that changed everything. And that's when he went to the Catholic Church and said, you're wrong. And then today we're all Protestants and we've opposed the Catholic Church because of their indulgences and all the practices that were wrong. And that's it. Wow. And so it's like when you look at it and you think like, so when I say, remember back in the 90s, it was, he's my personal savior. I gave my life to Christ. I said the sinner's prayer. Wait a minute. Did Christ make himself known to you? Did he reveal himself? Did he grant you the gift of salvation through grace, through faith, that ye are saved? Or was it of yourselves? Because the Bible says if it was of yourselves, you would boast in your human autonomy. Mm-hmm. And so I've relinquished all my rights to the cross. I've relinquished everything. Christ is Lord. Boom. And so everything's restricted, right? The freedom of our will is restricted. I want to go to Hawaii tomorrow, but I have to go to work. Right? Like I want to eat those cookies, but I'm restricted because I'm eating a healthy diet.
If you're on healthy,
I know,
Lord,
you got calories.
And I need calories, right? But that's the idea. So it's a limit. But the same concept goes with this idea that God has granted me the faith that is a gift. It's grace that's been granted. Now I'm saved. At least any man should boast. And it's changed. It's just rocking. It's rocking my world because I would like to think I played a part in it.
Sure.
And I know that's a wrestle. I get it. Like we wrestle all the time with predestination. We've been predetermined to be adopted. Or is it our ability in which to choose? That's been the age-old question, and that's not the argument. We could spend hours upon hours with that debate.
Well, salvation might be a gift, but right here in this passage that we're studying, it says, do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. So, I mean, we got to do something. I mean,
Yes.
Proof is in the pudding.
So we're not just here and God does everything. I mean, God is sovereign and He is the one that saves us, and I guess He gives us the faith and everything. But I mean, I think that we have to do something. I mean,
For sure.
we got to do something. We have a part in this.
But I think that's the relationship. So he calls us into relationship with him, calls us to him. But once we are there to develop that relationship, it's like any relationship that we have.
Yeah. And of
So
course,
if you're not investing in it and you're not, then you just stay at this level that you're not. There's nothing.
right, because you're right. He does say, but the salvation is a gift from God. I mean,
Right.
I agree. I mean, it was a gift that Jesus Christ hung on the cross to pay my
Crazy,
sin debt.
Crazy. I still.
You know, I mean, that's what really sealed it up, I think, isn't it? I mean, that Jesus Christ paid that price.
Yes.
And so that's how we got that gift. You know, I mean, that's how, I mean, that we can be redeemed. I mean, or you know what I mean? Reconciled to God is through that cross, that suffering on the cross, that Jesus, even the guys that were hanging him on the cross, is, you know, he said, God, forgive them.
Yeah.
Even the guys, he looked right down at him and they're killing him. He said, forgive them, man. You know, but then we have a part, and we're reading it right here. It says, don't just merely listen to the word, but do what it says. We got to do something. I mean,
Yeah.
we have some kind of part in this.
Well, and Abraham was justified by faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
So did he just do nothing? What was
Yeah.
it? What was the expression of his faith? Taking his son, and you know what I mean?
He was gonna sacrifice him.
He was doing something. Even the thief on the cross, who people will say never got baptized, never had a chance to do anything. I was really looking at this in relation to acting out faith, right? And actually showing something. But the thief on the cross actually did do something. He rebuked the guy next to him, and it took faith, and it took actually believing, you know what I mean, that Jesus was who he was, to actually rebuke that person. So that was the demonstration that of where his heart actually was. And it came out just like, you know, if you won the lottery, if you thought, I always thought about this, if you shared it with somebody, like, you know, hey, if you had a winning lottery ticket, you could walk somebody, their actions would immediately change. Even before they cashed it in, their actions would change because they had believed they got that money. And the same thing is true. Like, just from believing it, your actions start changing. Just like what you're doing at work, even without saying anything, like the guys are saying, just because you believe in Jesus, you're going to do something that's not going to be what those other guys would do. And you won't even realize it, but they will. They'll be like,
They're watching.
that's weird, he did that way, you know. And it'll be like a testimony itself.
And by the way, James 2, what are we going to be talking about? Like next week. Faith is dead
Yeah.
without works.
Right.
Neil, the proof is in the pudding. Seb, the proof is Mike.
Who keeps
Tom,
talking about pudding?
pudding?
Next week we're gonna
Okay.
have pudding.
Banana pudding.
No, but the fact, but right. So the proof is in the pudding. So we can go around talking all we want about us or God, but what is your life reflecting? And that's obviously what you're getting at. Neil, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Your life will reflect it. So rather, like for me and you, Neil, when we were teens and we gave our life, which all of us probably are in the same story, rather it was that moment of our ability to do that or God doing something, today is our life reflecting the God of the universe, the God that saved us, the God that implanted himself in us. And I have to say, yeah, Neil, I without a doubt, like I just told, I was on the way over, I go, Neil, I'm not worried about it because if we all die, I'm not worried about you. You're going to heaven. There's no concern in the room, but for the non-believer, the question is, right, Mike, is the guy at the gym is, well, you can't have my faith.
Yeah.
He gets puffed up. Well, what do you mean? Who are you to tell me I can't receive Jesus? And you just smile at him and you just go, brother, come. And Jesus says, come, knock at the door. Seek, you will find me.
So, you guys think the sinner's prayer is still relevant today in today's world? I mean, do we have to ask Christ to come into our lives? Do we make that choice? Or does he choose us?
I think the sinner's prayer is a formal way to get somebody to understand what's really happening, right? You need to come to God and make him the Lord of your life and repent and turn from what you're doing. But in order to do that, you've got to see that what you're doing is wrong and, you know, at least acknowledge that you want to make that change. And the sinner's prayer is kind of like the easy way to kind of go over that. But I think that one spot that it maybe isn't as descriptive as it needs to be is in the area of repentance and obedience. You know what I mean? A lot of times it seems like just, I said that prayer, I'm good, you know, where it's like, that prayer is the first of many steps that you're going to take, you know what I mean, on a journey, and it's not the
Yeah,
last
the
step.
first step. I think you're right. I think that's I think it's just a point of saying because I know people that have said that prayer and nothing.
Didn't change anything.
The weeds come up. You're like, hey, and then still that's. So I think it's just an initial
I think the proof is in the pudding.
Oh, there we go.
Chocolate or vanilla? What's better than chocolate?
Right?
You gotta make
I'm not gonna say it.
pudding.
I'm not gonna say it. I'm not gonna say it. So, I'm gonna basically kind of close this out now, and I wanted to reread some of the verses because I think this has the best description of sin anywhere in the Bible. What sin is. And I'll read that one first. Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life which God promises those who love him. Let no one say, when he is tempted, I am being tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, and he himself tempts no one. But each person is tempted when he is lured away and enticed by his own desires. Then the desire, when it has conceived, gives birth to sin. And the sin, when it is fully grown, brings forth death.
Mm-hmm.
Do not be deceived, my beloved brethren.
Amen. That's right.
So it starts with temptation. You got to nip it in the bud there.
And your own desire. It starts with your own inside, your own
Right.
thing you really want the most.
And then the other one is the last two verses where he talks about what religion is. If anyone thinks he's religious and does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his heart, this person's religion is worthless. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep one's self unstained, or in the verse I had, unpolluted by the world.
What do you guys think that means, to bridle your tongue?
Well,
I mean, does it mean you can't cuss? Or I mean, is it a little deeper than that?
well, with a bridle, don't you like steer the horse? Don't you like stop the horse? Don't you like pull the reins, and the bridle jams in their mouth and they stop like immediately, right?
Yeah.
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 I think it goes to, just like anything, right? Like to the level of your understanding of it, right? For somebody, it might just be like not cussing. But for somebody that understands what the communication they're saying is, it probably goes a little bit deeper than that. You know what I mean? Into, should I even bring up this topic with this person?
Slander or
You know, because is it going to
Abuse.
lead them
No, abuse.
in a direction, right? But it's interesting how God has a lot of these things where he's trying to teach us self-control, you know, and I think self-control is really important because it's like, you can drink alcohol, just don't get drunk. You can have sex, just with one person in marriage. You can say all these words, but I want you to bridle your tongue. You know what I mean? It's like he's saying, I don't want you to be this automaton that's either going to be yes or no. It's easy to be like, no, I'm not going to drink. You can't drink. Or yeah, you can drink, whatever. God doesn't care. But it's hard to be like, now I have to regulate myself.
That's right.
I have to self-regulate and go, okay, let me check and see if I'm doing okay. Or, you know what I mean? Like, it's much harder to do that.
And
And
a lot of people will try to say, oh, everything in moderation, because they don't want to put the critical thought into.
yeah.
Well, sometimes I see a hooker in moderation, and I take a little bit of LSD in moderation too.
Yeah, which is moderate.
Yeah. Like alcohol in moderation and hooker in moderation, it's all the same thing. But they don't want to put the critical thought into it, you know. But I think you're right, Rob.
Yeah. It's case by case. That's a good point. Yeah, totally. Situation where I had to bridle my tongue. Great example. I think Horse Neil, I already told you. I think Ange too. I had a situation with somebody that I thought was standing forth for a freedom fighter within the company that mass mandates. I'm not going to be into that. I'm really engaging conversation with this individual. I'm like really satisfied that she's standing firm. It's going to, you know, she's very American, Republican, whatever, but she's Christian, and so I'm like, wow. So, you know, we're engaging this conversation in multiple weeks and weeks. I went in there and wasn't wearing a mask, and there was a frustration, and there was about 3 other external vendors in there at the same, and nobody was really masking, and this individual was very frustrated, to what I know now is frustrated towards God, to the point where a few days later her husband approached me with threatening me that I will mandate the mask in light of her frustration. And I had to bridle my tongue at that moment. And we could almost laugh about it. Neil, because if it was you, you would have told him how you felt. You would have. We might have gotten a fist.
Neil would have been bridling his knuckles.
No, like seriously, not literally. Neil's not that bad. But the point is Neil, you would have been like, "Are you kidding me? Who do you think you are?" But I had to bridle my tongue. And then guess what I had to do also? In addition to that, I had to bridle my tongue with her. Because you know what I wanted to do? No, I wanted to go in there and tell, oh, so yeah, Robert came up and I just wanted to lay under. I thought you were fighting the freedom. I thought you.
Yeah.
And I went in there and I said, Deneen, good morning, good to see you. And I was wearing my mask, like real, just loud to make it like. But I didn't want to. I wanted to do that, but I was like humbly like, hey, bridling my tongue. And it was hard for me to do that because I wanted to tell her how I felt. No, I mean, and I have rights to tell her how I felt. Her husband's going to threaten me. And it was a trip, and it was through the Spirit, even the way I responded to her husband. I walked away from that, as he probably did. He was probably more blown away as I was, that the Spirit intervened, because we would have gotten a fist fight real easy. First of all, who are you to tell me about something that's my personal freedom? And I understand she was frustrated, but why didn't she mention it to me and say, Steve, can you please place your mask on? Not a problem. No problem. I could have went on and on and on and on and on and on. But this passage of Scripture, I need to bridle my tongue. I need to be the one. Jesus laid down his life as a drink offering, and I would just long to do the same. Lord, help me to do the same. Bridle my tongue. Guide me as you will to guide me. Now, there's going to come another time, Mike, when I need to pull the bridle off and tell people how I feel about these mandates, right? But it's case by case. Different.
And I think that's where the Holy Spirit, because even hearing the story, I'm saying, oh, I would never, I'd tell that. But you know what? When you're in that situation, the Holy Spirit has a way of bringing a peace. And I've been in those situations where you're like, I can't. All of a sudden you're like, well, okay. No, you know what? No big deal. Okay, we'll later on you think, man, I could have probably done that. But it's the way that the Holy Spirit works in us.
Yeah.
He gives you that peace in that moment to do what you need to do.
I think that's awesome what you did. And I think what you did is exactly what we need to do in this day and age. Our Christian liberties have never been challenged. Any liberties for that matter. Not any, but most of them haven't been challenged to the degree they're being challenged and going to be challenged. And if we want to make an example and witness to people, surrendering some of our Christian liberties and admitting it. We can even admit, like, hey, this is my liberty, but for you, I'm going to give this up for you. I think that is a huge witness tool in this day and age. And I really dug my heels in on, like, not wearing a mask and, like, thinking about and praying about and going through some of these scriptures. I'm like, I don't know if I like what Paul said there. Like, So, but I not that I think we need to go into this now, but I think it's something that should be definitely on our mind, that we should, I don't know, that's a good face or a bad face. Tom's like, in Bible's not allowed at the Bible study. But just, I think we're going to have to really think about this critically, not just in our lifetime, but like this year, and the year's almost over, If we want to be a serious witness, I think there is a huge opportunity for us there around people in the community we're with.
So you're saying wear a mask or don't wear a mask?
Oh, here we go.
Because personally, I wear a mask if I think it's going to make somebody else feel like they're more comfortable.
Right.
Exactly.
I don't want to wear a mask, and I've been to lots of events when we were in Europe. There's a lot of places where nobody wore a mask.
Yeah.
But then when you walk into a restaurant, when you go here, when you go into a grocery store, you got to have a mask on. And I guess what I hate the most is when somebody says, "Hey, put a mask on."
Yeah.
Oh, I want to go over and just go, boom, here's your mask. One guy, I started tracking this one guy down one time. When he just, "Hey, pull your mask up," and I'm going, "You don't talk to me this way. I don't care if you work in this restaurant. What's your boss?"
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, what if in that situation that guy said, "Put your mask on," and you came up to him and you're like, "You want me to put my mask on?" "I'm going to put my mask on because I care about you."
Because I love you, man.
And like, what if you did? And then you put your mask on, and you're like, that was creepy but weird, and I'm really glad he did that. I guess I respect him.
Or what if you did this?
No, I had an old guy. I had an old guy do it to me over at the Restore. And I go, it's my mask in the car. He goes, go get your mask then. Just go over to your car and get your mask. And I go, and I was just like burning, and the adrenaline level was like here. And if the guy would have touched me, I would have launched him. And so I walked back over there. I got my mask on. You know, I said, you know what? You're really lucky. You're really lucky I wasn't somebody else, because he would have just, the next guy you talked to would have just snapped you. And I walked inside, and he goes, don't threaten me like that. And I yelled back, I'm not threatening you, I'm warning you.
Praise the Lord! Praise the Lord!
I don't think my adrenaline has ever been that high.
Wow.
I was like, and I was ready. It was just like this. It was just like, boom! Just like lift the guy out, his feet, throw him back, and
He's
I was in his face this close. I'm going, don't touch him.
See, that's the Holy Spirit.
Hey, Mike,
My adrenaline goes. I'm thinking about
Mike,
it.
spot on, dude. Spot on. This is very relevant, by the way. This conversation is very relevant.
No, because we live in a world where you need to, because other people are crazy
Yeah.
and they won't accept it.
I don't
think.
I don't think this is the first time the Christian church has been faced with the question of masking. I think this was also happening.
I don't know. But we're having Grandparents' Day at the church on Friday, at the school there, and they're going, well, we can't really go in the classrooms because we don't want you to go to those kids' classrooms because all this COVID stuff and blah 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 blah. But they want us to go in and buy books at the book fair where we stand like sardines in a line, and that's okay. But we don't want you to go in the kids' classroom. I'm on. Oh, how hypocritical can you be?
So I've been collecting headlines in preparation for when we get into Revelation. It's just, I mean, it is a gold mine right now if you want to get Revelation-based headlines. But as I was looking, I saw this thing, and it says it was an ad for people who were dealing with stress, and it was on a news website, and it was kind of like going through, and the catchphrase was "vaccinated but afraid to go out again," and it really hit me like. There are people that are so caught up in the fear and the world itself that even though they got vaccinated, they still are dealing with the fear that the world is bringing to the table. And I think as we move forward in time, we're going to see this separation, whether you like it or not, that when you have the Holy Spirit, some of these things won't, you're assured where you're going to go. So if I get sick, if I don't get sick, you know what I mean? Okay. But then this person next to you, this is all they got.
Yeah.
And it's scary to think that it could be gone in a second, right? And so just those little things, and there's going to be more things to come, more lies that people will get bought into that are just going to seem cuckoo birds to us, and we're going to just look just like as much of a cuckoo bird to them. They're going to be like, how could you not, like just how vehemently they get about masks, you wearing a mask, it's like, it's going to be like that. I think that, I don't know where I was going with that, but I thought it's interesting that we're getting to that time where things are starting to separate like that.
This is your lead into Revelation.
I know, I'm burying the lead. I should have waited.
He's anxious to get into Revelation. So.
We're all going to be texting you headlines now.
Yeah,
right. Revelation headlines.
Stop.
Okay, so who's going to pray us out tonight?
She'd like to bleed.
You?
Oh my goodness.
Let's see if the blood of Roy is still in the veins.
This isn't like the Lord of the Rings. It hasn't been passed on. No. We can do that.
Okay.
Lord, we thank you so much for what you're doing in our lives. Thank you, Lord, that a random Bible study on a Tuesday night is ordained by you to such an extent, Lord, that you have chosen this time for these men to be here to discuss what's being discussed. Thank you that you have that providence. Lord, I pray especially for Anthony and his situation there where he's living his faith out in front of people. Give him strength, Lord. Anoint him.
Yes, Father.
Guide him. Work with him, Lord, on what he should say and what he shouldn't say. But most of all, Lord, just walk with him, because that will be seen. For Tom's friend who is struggling with faith
Lord, we ask that anything that's hindering him would drop, whatever it is.
Yes.
We come
Hallelujah.
before you and ask that. We claim him in advance for your kingdom.
Thank you.
We ask that you would work your Holy Spirit's work in his life and bring him to that awareness of who you are and the wonderful saving grace you offer. Thank you, Lord. Go with us as we leave here. Help us to be examples for you and to bring others to that understanding of who you are. Bless us all. Anoint us, Lord, so that the next time we meet, there's some exciting stories about what you're doing in the lives of those
Yes.
around us.
Hallelujah.
And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Awesome.
We fit right in, don't we?
I know. I know.
It's like he's been here.
Just trying to. I'm like, shut up. You don't need to say something every time.
Right. That's me. I'm bridling on my tongue all the time.